Welcome to this special edition of the Money to the Masses podcast. It's been years in the making and something I'm really looking forward to. So I'm going to be talking about how to make your child a millionaire. So this has stemmed from a podcast that we did many years ago. It's one of the most popular shows that we ever created. And it talked about the concept of how much you need to invest given a certain set of assumptions like the rate of return to become a millionaire by the time you retire. Now, that was based upon you having a fixed amount each month and it never changed. But the thing with investing and compound interest, which is where you earn interest on your interest, that really works when you put more money in, but also if you allow compound interest to work for a longer period of time. That naturally then took it on to using it to invest for your children's future, and the idea of building what we call the millionaire strategy of how to help your child become a millionaire. So we've been wanting to create something and partner with somebody to be able to make this strategy more accessible to people and easier to implement. So that's what this show's all about. Now, I'm going to just remind people about the millionaire strategy. Now, we're showing on screen a page that we've built on the Money to the Masses website on how to help your child become a millionaire. Now, the strategy, which I personally use for my own children, aims to make children millionaires when they are older. And the strategy is built upon several key principles which we discussed in the past episode, but it revolves around harnessing the power of compounding by contributing regularly to tax-advantaged junior ISAs until the child is age 18, at which point they then take over the investment journey themselves. And most importantly of all, it assumes that you start from zero today. So simply how it works is that you start small by regularly contributing a monthly amount. Now, there's a table on screen where you can look at your child's age and assumed rate of return, and it will estimate an amount of money that you could invest each month, a fixed amount that could potentially help your child become a millionaire by the age of 65. Nothing, of course, is guaranteed, and investments go up as well as down. Then you let compounding take effect within the junior ISA, so your returns are reinvested to generate their own returns, creating that powerful acceleration over time. And then the idea is you can then supercharge that, and this is where it gets particularly powerful. So the secret to the millionaire strategy that we've talked about in the past and that I implement for my own children is to increase the contributions that you put in every year by 5%. Just that 5% can ensure that the future value is protected from inflation, and it significantly boosts that. Now, just to give you an idea, an example, if you had a child that was, say, 5 years old and you invested £56 a month with a 5% increase each year, you could create a fund worth £2.2 million by their retirement at age 65. And that's assuming an investment growth of 8%, which isn't guaranteed. We have to make that caveat. But that would be worth £680,000 in today's money. So you have to note the annual rates of return are not guaranteed, as I said. But this idea of giving your children the ability to build their wealth over time. And one of the things when we talked about the whole idea of trying to make ourselves millionaires, this is Andy and I on the original podcast, is that we are in our 40s and we wished we'd started earlier. So what we've done is we've partnered with a company, and it's a spoiler, it is Wealthify. I'm going to introduce my guest in a moment to make this plan easy to track and implement. So I welcome my guest to the show, and we're going to talk all about it and the company Wealthify itself. Welcome to the show, Simon.
Hi, and thank you so much for having me on.
And I mean, that was a very long intro from me on the idea of the millionaire strategy. But just to give people listening and watching this has been something that we've been building towards for quite some time, isn't it?
And yeah, as you pointed out in your intro, like helping your kids start means that they have the benefit of time. And so, yeah, the junior ISA that we have, we're really happy to work with you guys and put it onto your site and help people start with that plan.
So you're the COO of Wealthify, and could you just give people an idea of who Wealthify is, just in case they don't know who Wealthify is as a company?
Yeah, so Wealthify started in 2016, and we're now backed by Aviva. And so we're what the industry would call a robo-investor. What that means for you is you can choose a risk level. It's really simple. It's between 1 and 5 that you want to take with your money. We'll check that you understand what that risk is, but then we'll manage your investments for you. So rather than having to choose specific funds or choose particular stocks, we're going to build out a diversified plan that helps you grow your money.
And so I remember when we had the initial conversations, because The problem with the millionaire strategy, and this is just being realistic, it was an idea that I came up with a number of years ago about, in particular, increasing the contributions that you put in each year by a set amount. So to combat the effects of inflation. And one of the biggest frustrations I had was that there wasn't an easy way to do it. So there are lots of platforms out there that with which you can invest via a junior ISA and you can implement the strategy that I do myself, but it's very cumbersome, and let's be honest, people are busy and then they often forget. So when we had those original conversations, I recall you saying that I think we could do it. And so from that point on, it's quite interesting to explain to people what happens each year when we get to the point of the anniversary of a junior ISA to help implement the strategy that we've talked about.
Yeah, so with all the Wealthify investment plans, you can set up a direct debit, and that means you can put in a recurring amount each month. The average is around about £100, and we've got about 40% of our customers put in a direct debit so that they can have that continued growth. But the thing that we wanted to put together, as you say, is something that reminds you basically to increase that so that you keep your deposits that keep on going in line with inflation. And so we've set up just a simple reminder that reminds you each year, do you want to increase your direct debit? And that means that your contributions move up in line with inflation.
So just to give an example, let's say the £50 a month was the contribution you were putting into your child's junior ISA in the first year. Then what would happen on their birthday, the subsequent year, you would be sent an email that would say that, do you want to increase your contributions by 5%, the monthly contributions? It's not an auto increase. You have the option to choose to do it. You have to enact it. So that would increase your contribution from £50 a month to £52.50 a month thereafter. And each birthday after that, you'd get a similar email reminder. So I just want to jump back to the investment part of the proposition. So when people often want to take out a junior ISA, they have that decision of, well, what do I invest in? Because a lot of people, when they start investing in a junior ISA, it may be the first time they've actually started investing. They may not have invested for themselves. And we often find the confusion, people don't know what to invest in. So from your point of view, how does the Wealthify proposition work? You mentioned there's different portfolios. Is it advice, or is it that they choose the portfolio they want themselves?
Yeah, so it's not advice. We don't do financial advice, but we build out a portfolio that invests in lots of different markets. And that means that you've got diversification. So you're not just risking one particular thing. And we're choosing what we think are the best funds to achieve that kind of diversification and the growth that you're looking for. And we think that really helps. I mean, I'm a young parent myself. I have relatively little time. So time to do research, time to make changes to your investment plans, you don't need to do, because we'll do that for you. But we also keep you updated about it. We don't want that investing experience for you not to know what we're doing. And so our investment team, so Jesse Kwok's our CIO, we do lots of content that kind of keeps you up to date about what we're doing, any reaction to markets, so whether there's been particular changes or whether we're making changes to your plan. So if we choose to invest in a new fund, we'll tell you about that and we'll tell you why.
So that I thought was particularly interesting, because members of the Money to Masses team do have Wealthify junior ISAs. I have to disclose that because they've shown me some of the communication that is sent out to customers, including, as you say, changes to the way the portfolio may be run in terms of the share exposure and things like that. I mean, is that something that's new that Wealthify do, or has that always been done?
It's something we've always done. We've always put front and center that we want to be really good at communication about what we're doing. Investments can be pretty baffling and there's loads of terminology. And so what we want to do is make sure that our communications tell you what we're doing really clearly and simply, because no one wants to feel detached from their money and their investments. And so we think it makes good sense to give you the confidence that we still know what we're doing and we're keeping track of the markets. And there's all sorts of things going on in the world at the moment, and there always is really in financial markets. And so we make sure we've got a team that's kind of on it and monitoring that, but also giving you communications that tell you that we're doing that and we're either making changes or we don't need to make changes.
And you mentioned earlier that term robo-advisor.
Yeah.
And it was one of those terms that was coined really by journalists. And I don't think it does justice to what really goes on, because there's not robots running things. You've got an investment committee, presumably.
Yeah.
And I mean, how does that work? Talk through that, because I find that is something that people don't realise, that there's a lot going on behind the scenes when it comes to how portfolios are actually managed.
So yeah, we have an in-house investment management team. And they're constantly looking at the funds that we invest in, as well as all of the other funds that are available to us, as well as what the markets are doing, to understand whether we've got the right funds and whether our investment managers are doing what we want them to do with the money. And then we're also looking at the markets to understand whether we're positioned for like growth. So whether US equities look better than European equities. And then over the top of that, we also have an investment committee. And they're a set of external advisors that basically review the process that we're going through on a day-to-day basis to make sure that there's a really good, like diverse, like pool of thought. But all of that runs into making decisions on your behalf, so you don't have to do the investment management, and you don't have to think about which markets are better and which markets aren't.
So the other thing I wanted to bring us on to is the ethical portfolios, because there are a lot of parents who understandably they invest for their children for the long term, but they want a better world for them as well. So you do run ethical portfolios too?
Yeah, we do. So we've got the same investment management style, but what we're looking there is to make sure that we screen out a number of sectors that we don't think are ethical, if you like. And so that is taking out adult entertainment, tobacco, gambling, and weapons manufacture. And so the fund managers manage their investment portfolios with a tolerance that allows them to have maximum of 10%. And so what you end up with is effectively an ethical view on what we think is still good investment opportunities. So that's popular because it means that your long-term kind of future is aligned to like your ethical stance.
But I know there'll be people listening to this and they'll think, well, how much does all of that cost? So how much does it cost to invest with Wealthify?
Yeah, so Wealthify charges one simple fee of 0.6% for the investment management that we do. If you've got a SIP and that goes over £100,000, that fee drops to 0.3% per annum. And so that covers all of the investment management we do. And then the thing on top of that is the fund fees. So we choose the funds for you and we're aiming to make sure they're as cheap as possible for the performance and risk that you're getting from them. And so on the original plans, you're looking at 0.16% on top of our 0.6%, so 0.76 total. And then on the ethical funds, you're looking at the same 0.6 management fee and then 0.7% on top of that for the fund fees. And the reason they're more expensive is because they're actively managed. And that's because the fund managers are choosing specific stocks to make sure that they've got the right ethical stance in that portfolio.
Simon mentioned the fees there. Well, Wealthify makes investing simple by managing your investments for you, and they're offering you no management fees for 12 months. Invest in a junior ISA, stocks and shares ISA, or general investment account and pay no management fees for 12 months. New customers only. T's and C's apply, and your capital is at risk. Tax treatment depends on your individual circumstances and may change in the future. Actually, one question I was going to ask you, I think for people listening to this, they'll maybe not realise that what happens when a child gets to 18, when they have a junior ISA, what are the options for them. And there may be some people who are slightly reticent about what does happen. I mean, can you elaborate what happens when a child gets to 18, when they have a junior ISA?
Yeah, so the first thing we do is contact the parent and say, we're preparing to convert the junior ISA into a stocks and shares ISA for the soon-to-be 18-year-old. And the great thing about that is, we take the national insurance number and then automatically we convert that into an ISA for the now young adult. And all of that is protected. So you've put up to a maximum of £9,000 a year into a junior ISA, and all of that growth has been tax protected. So then your child gets a stocks and shares ISA with a lump sum of money that you've been building over time, and then they can take on, and typically most of our customers keep that on, and the child continues to invest in their stocks and shares ISA.
So that fills me with incredible amounts of confidence and enthusiasm that people are keeping their stocks and shares ISAs once they turn 18. So the junior ISA turns into that stocks and shares ISA and they continue to invest, because that is really what I'm hoping people are going to do and continue that into the future with this whole idea of a millionaire strategy. So can I just ask you as a parent, so do you invest in a junior ISA?
Yeah, I do. I've got two girls and I have two junior ISAs. A slightly funny story, I set them up. I was nerdy and decided I'd set them up on the day they were born. And so, it's a pretty tiring experience. But for some reason, I decided for my first child, I'll set one up. And then I thought I'd better do the same thing for my other daughter. So they're both set up on the day they were born. I set up a direct debit and it's super simple.
So on the website. We will put a link in the show notes and we'll show it on screen now. There is a page where we talk about this whole millionaire strategy. And on that page, there is a calculator that you guys provide, which you can put in details of the amount you're going to put in a month, maybe how much you're initially investing in a junior ISA. And then you can see projections that aren't guaranteed in any way in how much the child could potentially have at 18. Can I just ask, do you put the same amount in each of your children's junior ISAs, or do you put different amounts? Because this is something that has been a big topic of discussion in the Money to the Masses offices.
Yeah, I did. I put exactly the same amount in, so obviously the older child's got more in because each month it's the same direct debit. So they should have roughly the same amount. Certainly they've had the same amount that I've put in by the time they're 18. So yeah, no favourites in the Holland household.
So I'm different. I have to admit, I don't. My two children don't get the same amount. They're too young to listen to the podcast, but it's not me picking a favourite. Because obviously I'm looking at the idea of building wealth into the future, and then when they got much older, this whole idea of maybe potentially making them a millionaire. So my eldest child, I didn't start her junior ISA until she was nearly 10, whereas my youngest, I started when she was 5. So I had a slightly lower amounts, obviously, that will compound over time. So at the moment, they're not level pegging, but they don't know what's in there. And I don't know how old your children are, but this is a question that a lot of people ponder. Do you engage your children with what's going on in their junior ISAs? Are they aware of it, or are they too young?
So my oldest is 3, so she's probably a little bit young to have a good conversation about like the what, whys and wherefores of investments. But, you know, they've got a shop which they love, and they've got some like paper money, and so I'm always talking about, you know, okay, can I buy this and can I buy that? Things are quite expensive in the shop, so she's definitely got something right.
She's an entrepreneur.
Yeah, definitely.
And for me, for people listening to this, a key part of what I'm trying to achieve and help people to grow money for their children into the future is you do have to engage with them. I mean, ultimately at the age of 18, they could take the money from the junior ISA and go and do what they want with it, because they could encash that and go and spend it because it's rightfully theirs. But the idea is that you really want to try and educate them under the strategy that I talk about, to try and get them to see that they could take that money and then add to it and compound it further themselves. So I'm trying to do something with my eldest. She's 15, so we're further along the journey. And if anybody has ideas out there of how they engage their children with investing, but I've started to get them to try and look at the news and maybe pick the odd stock, hypothetically, of course, and then try and understand why the share prices go up and down on particular things, and just to try and engage with brand names that they know. So it might be a shop they shop in the high street, and then they realise that, well, their share price has gone up and down. They understand what's driven that, what the company does. And I think that idea of trying to bring the real world into what investments are, rather than this number on a spreadsheet, I think is my attempt. We'll see if it works, because I really want her to engage with it and then try and take it on. But it's one of those things, I think, if nothing else, it will help them potentially learn a bit about money, and more than I did when I left school at, say, 18. I didn't know much about money and investing at all. I mean, I know in the past, Wealthify have done things to help young people with money and investing, haven't they?
Yeah, so we ran a future skills program that was with Young Enterprise, and that was all about engaging people and creating materials for teachers in schools. But I think you're right. Money's almost invisible in like modern society. Now that we've only got cards or using your phone to pay for things, it's quite difficult for children to see and engage with people buying things and seeing people selling things. And so I do think you have to talk about it more, which I guess as a nation, we're not great at talking about money famously. And so just creating materials or moments where you can talk about money, I think, is really important, whether that's talking about spending it or whether you're talking about growing it.
And one thing I just want to touch upon, because there will be people out there who may be not thinking about their own children because they may be grown and be adults, but they might have grandchildren. So it is possible for a grandparent to pay into a junior ISA, isn't it, with Wealthify?
Yeah, it is. What we set up was a thing called Friends and Family. And we know it's really tough as a parent, I certainly do, that you've got a lot of like demands, whether it's childcare, etc. But we also know that grandparents and friends and family like to help out. And sometimes that is, would they like some money for their birthday, that sort of thing. And so we've set up a friends and family journey. It means you, as the parent who set up the junior ISA, can invite people by email, and they get a simple link. They can authenticate using their phone. And then they can set up and contribute to the junior ISA as well. And they can do that either as one-off, or they can do that with a direct debit, just in the same way as a normal parent can.
So That's it for this show. Thank you to my guest Simon for coming. If you want to find out more about the Millionaire Strategy and Wealthify and their Junior ISA, we'll put a link in the notes of the show so you can go and find the tool and play around with the tool that I mentioned earlier on in the show and the calculator and find more about the Millionaire Strategy. So Simon, thank you for coming on the show this week. It's been something I've been looking forward to for a number of years, and we can finally talk about it.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been really great.
Your child can have one or both types of Junior ISA, and you can deposit up to the total annual limit of £9,000 into them in any combination you like in the tax year. Stocks and shares Junior ISAs, also known as investment Junior ISAs, these invest in financial markets with the aim of earning returns for investors that are greater than those you would get in a cash Junior ISA. And with stocks and shares Junior ISAs, your capital is at risk, so the value of investments may go down as well as up, meaning your child could get back less than you put in. The benefit of a Junior ISA is that you or your child won't pay tax on any interest, returns or dividends they receive. Leadenhall Learning Limited, trading as Money to the Masses, is an appointed representative of Wealthify Limited. Wealthify is authorised and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. With investing, your capital is at risk. Tax treatment depends on your individual circumstances and may change in the future.